He's gone, for good. No spin-off, no happily ever after wrap-up, no weepy reunion at the tell-all. Just silence. After years of storming through our screens like a battering ram in cargo shorts, Andrei Kastrovit has finally been banned from the 90 Day Fiancé franchise. And not just quietly written out, we're talking off the air, off the record, off the grid. But before you breathe a sigh of relief or call it closure, ask yourself this: why now? Why so suddenly, after nearly a decade of production-fueled chaos? Because this wasn't just a breakup between a network and a reality star. It was a forced detachment from a man some insiders believe had too much control behind the scenes. A man whose storyline, at face value, looked like your everyday culture clash. A grumpy Moldovan guy struggling to fit in with his American wife's loud family. But if you paid attention, really paid attention, the signs were always flickering just beyond TLC's edits. He didn't just argue with people, he outlasted them, blitzed them. Over time, the siblings faded, the cameras shifted, the narrative bent. Andrei didn't play reality TV, he shaped it. And when he couldn't shape it anymore, it spit him out. This isn't gossip. This is a broadcast disappearance with receipts. We're talking about a man who entered the US through a fiancé visa, somehow embedded himself deep into his in-laws' family business, racked up multiple loans, started demanding buy-in on property deals, and still walked around like he was the boss. And the wild part, he acted like that from day one. You remember it, the backyard fights, the weird tension at every family event, the way Elizabeth's siblings, whether it was Charlie exploding or Becky gaslighting or Jen side-eyeing everything, started to fall back, one by one. And who's still standing next to Chuck, quiet, controlling, and holding the metaphorical keys? Andrei. Because that aggression was never just emotional. It looked like tactical positioning disguised as macho bravado. He didn't care about winning arguments. He cared about narrowing the playing field. And now, the network has drawn its line in the sand. After the season 9 tell-all gave us that unusually abrupt ending, no full cast hug, no teary family moment, nothing but chaos, a camera cut, and actors looking on edge. A TLC pulled the plug. Andrei is out, Elizabeth, radio silent, Chuck and the siblings, ghosted from each other's socials. But if he wasn't the villain on our screens, who was he before the cameras? Because the story they gave us never quite lined up with the man who kept showing up in the margins. And where there are gaps in a storyline, there's usually a paper trail no one wants us to see. Before the Instagram posts and cargo pants, before the messy cookouts and cringe-heavy wedding episodes, Andrei Kastrovit was a police officer, not a mall cop, a trained, active-duty law enforcement agent in Moldova. According to multiple sources and confirmed by Andrei himself on-screen, he worked as a detective with a badge, a gun, and specialized training in surveillance, interrogation, and asset recovery. You'd think that kind of resume would be front and center in his 90-day backstory. But no. Instead, we got the version where he was a humble bouncer in Ireland, chasing love on a dating app. That rewrite is the first red flag. You don't go from investigating organized crime to bouncing at nightclubs unless something went sideways. And the show? It never pressed him on it. Not once. Not in interviews, not in the confessionals, not in those awkward dinner table showdowns his new in-laws loved staging. Convenient, right? We're told the exit from Moldova was for a fresh start. But a lot of people want fresh starts. Not many trained officers abandon badge-level careers to start scrubbing beer spills in Dublin. Andrei's relocation wasn't a soft reboot. It was too sudden, too drastic, and most of all, too quiet. Here's where things get sticky. Several online reports out of Eastern Europe, yes, the ones no American producer wanted to translate, suggest Andrei was once part of Moldova's asset forfeiture unit. That's the department that deals with things like property seizure, financial crime, illegal transfers. If that holds even a drop of truth, it makes the timeline that much messier. Because if you're trained to follow paper trails, unfreeze bank accounts, and secure high-stakes transactions, would it really take you 5 seasons to understand how to flip a house in Tampa? People around him always said it. He wasn't clueless, he was calculated. Moldova didn't fail Andrei. He allegedly left on his own fast. Friends he once sparred with have dropped cryptic remarks online about unfinished business back home. There were whispers of unpaid debts, complicated fallouts with brass, and a resignation filed under less than ideal circumstances. None of it ever proved, but all of it conveniently avoided. Then suddenly he's in Ireland. Not for a job transfer, not on a tourist visa, but posted up long-term. No plot, no plan, until Elizabeth. And here's where things start to feel less like fate and more like fix. Because wouldn't Ireland be a perfect midpoint? European access, loose visa requirements, high tourist volume, and yes, dating apps full of Americans abroad. Some people chase passports, others chase connections. And when Andre matched with Elizabeth, an assistant from a prominent Florida real estate dynasty, let's not pretend it was random. On paper, she looked like a lottery ticket. Family-owned business, American citizenship, strong ties to a patriarch with property cash. For a man trained in leverage, that's not romance, that's opportunity. And to understand where it really began, we need to ask what Andre was running from. Because whatever he left behind in Moldova, he never looked back. He just kept walking further into someone else's fortune and made it look like love. When Andre landed in Florida on a cone visa, the show painted it like your standard 90-day setup, a foreign fiancé, dreamy-eyed bride, big cultural hurdles to climb. But something was off, not just in his behavior, but hers. Viewers were too distracted by his alpha tantrums to notice how quickly Elizabeth picked a side, and it wasn't her family's. From episode 1, she defended him. Loudly. Repeatedly. Against her own blood. It's easy to write it off as romance blindness, the classic, you don't know him like I do defense. But when you slow down and track each major conflict, something clearer starts to show. Elizabeth didn't just back Andre, she buffered him. She translated, excused, cleaned up the mess. Every apology came with a deflection. Every complaint from her siblings was dismissed instantly. Even when her father raised fair concerns about work ethic, money, aggression, she shot them down. With force, that's not passivity, that's loyalty to a plan, or at least a power shift. Remember, Elizabeth grew up in a family where business and boundaries blurred all the time. Her siblings were her coworkers. Her dad was her boss and benefactor. And she was the youngest, always stuck fighting for influence in a room full of louder, older kids who never treated her like an adult. They cut her off, talked over her, and held rank like it was royal blood. And Elizabeth, she played her role, until Andre showed up. That's when she changed. If you rewatch season 2 of their arc, you'll see a woman who isn't just in love, she's taking position. She starts skipping family meetings, pulls away from joint work, attends only when Andre's invited. Together, they draw a perimeter around themselves. What looked like tension was actually a quiet exit strategy, from being one of many to becoming a team of two. Andre bulldozed through the Patha's siblings, but Elizabeth was feeding him ammo. That's not speculation, that's pattern. Every time the family assembled, he went in swinging at exactly the person who'd upset her last. Charlie, disrespectful. Becky, jealous. Jen, nosy. The reasons changed, the target rotated, but the escalation always served one purpose, to fracture the sibling unit until no one else could challenge their place. Elizabeth began asserting more say over when and how the family would meet. She sat closer to Chuck. She started using phrases like, our decision, and we're thinking about investing. That we didn't exist before. It emerged right as Chuck's checkbook started opening to Andre, even at times that made zero financial sense. By season 5, she wasn't just defending Andre, she was co-piloting. She checked her sisters for questions. She snapped at her father for raising doubts. And on social media, the shift was even sharper. Her content went from playful and goofy to curated housewife branding. Inspirational captions, family unity posts, gentle husband shoutouts, all lined up with milestone payments, flipped properties, and overseas ventures. Who built that branding? Who helped her secure sponsors, respond to DMs, manage backlash? According to influencers in similar spaces and insider whispers, it wasn't a team. It was one man. Andre allegedly took control of her accounts around the same time he claimed she was too emotional to deal with fan drama. Her posts from that period started to sound more like him than her. Fewer emojis, more edge. And it didn't stop with captions. Elizabeth's online behavior mirrored a strategy, one that isolated her from her sisters while insulating her husband from criticism. Her influencer's deals required a family-friendly image. So every time things got messy, she vanished. She skipped confessionals. She refused to speak out during family blow-ups, not because she was scared, because being seen as neutral kept her brand and his access safe. The editing tried to frame her as the torn woman stuck between two loud forces. But in reality, she had already picked a side and a role. Andre didn't make her a co-conspirator. She signed up, probably not from day one, but definitely over time. She saw what it meant to attach herself to someone willing to burn bridges she'd been too afraid to touch, someone loud enough to drown out her siblings, someone bold enough to demand from Chuck what she never dared ask. Because some partners ask for protection, and some ask for power. And as long as Elizabeth stood next to him, smiling sweetly while the rest of the family spiraled, she had both. Or at least she thought she did. Until the house started to crumble. Until that last tell-all, when even she couldn't spin what was about to go down. From the very first barbecue, something felt off. Not reality TV off, like awkward toasts or passive-aggressive gifts. No, off. Andre didn't just rub Elizabeth's siblings the wrong way. He went for their throats. No charm, no social game, no effort to find common ground. He inserted himself straight into family dynamics and immediately exploded them. At first, the audience chalked it up to cultural differences. He's blunt, he's from Eastern Europe, he says what he thinks, classic fish out of water energy. But that excuse faded fast, because what we were watching wasn't stubborn honesty, it was strategy. Andre came into the Pothest family like it was a fortress he needed to break down. And instead of knocking gently, he took a sledgehammer to every single sibling. Remember Charlie's infamous drunken speech at the Moldovan wedding? Messy, yes, rude, definitely. But ask yourself, who set the stage for that outburst in the first place? The invitations, the tension, the jabs in confessionals beforehand, all of it pointed toward a setup. Like someone wanted Charlie to combust on camera. And when he did, Andre didn't back off, he pounced. The fight that followed wasn't just a clash of egos, it was branding. Now Charlie wasn't the heir to Chuck's business, he was the black sheep with a drinking problem. Becky had always been loud, but she asked fair questions about Andre's plans, and more importantly, his claims about wanting to help the family business. And every time she did, Andre framed her as jealous, bitter, or not knowing her place. Sound familiar? Because it happened with Jen too. The moment she pushed back on Andre's involvement, suddenly she was labeled the drama stirrer, the skeptic, and later, toxic. It went like clockwork. Anyone who challenged Andre quickly found themselves edited into a villain. Or worse, ghosted from future storylines. What started as family banter turned into tactical removal. And all the while, Andre kept climbing. Now, let's talk about Chuck. On paper, he should have been the last man to fall. He's the patriarch, the money holder, the boss. But watch how fast Andre got into his head. Season after season, he critiques the drama while nodding along to everything Andre says. He shifts from being cautious to being enabling. He starts loaning money, giving leadership roles, and letting his own kids fall out of orbit. All of this while Andre is actively disrespecting him on screen. So what explains that loyalty? Is it fear of losing Elizabeth? Is it guilt? Maybe. Or maybe Andre used his access and his training to subtly erode Chuck's alliances. You isolate each child. You flood the father with guy-speak and promises of legacy. You cry family drama while quietly positioning yourself as the only one offering peace. And it worked. By midway through their arc, the Pothest siblings weren't just divided. They visibly avoided each other. Scenes that once required group meetings became fractured into Liz and Andre versus someone. And the more fractured it got, the easier it became for Andre to declare himself the reasonable one. The stable one, the guy just trying to secure a future for his family. But let's not forget what that securing looked like. He didn't ask for a job, he demanded cash. Large sums, he didn't ask for guidance. He called the siblings incompetent. He didn't wait to be trusted. He acted like he owned the place. And all the while, the show subtly shifted its tone. Andre's early depiction as lazy and arrogant turned into something closer to calculated. Each new investment episode framed him differently. Less like an outsider, more like a misunderstood partner trying to bring structure to the messy Pothest clan. A family the viewers used to root for, now edited to look chaotic and petty. Many fans, confused by the shift, started defending Andre, ironically rewarding him for the very chaos he may have helped engineer. That's not accidental, that's control, media control, narrative control, emotional control. Over time, it was no longer about cultural misunderstanding. Andre wasn't failing to adapt, he just had no intention of fitting in. His goal was dominance. And while everyone else was too busy yelling at each other, he stayed focused. Quietly rising above the noise with one person beside him, Elizabeth, Andre wasn't burning bridges, he was clearing the field. One sibling at a time, he didn't just dismantle their credibility, he dismantled their access to Chuck, to the business, even to each other. And by the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late to stop it. The damage wasn't loud, it was surgical and permanent. On camera, it looked like a mess. Andre, eager to prove himself in the family business, asking Chuck for hundreds of thousands to take on real estate without experience, clashing with his sisters every 5 minutes. The edits told us this was impulsive ambition, a guy desperate for purpose, trying to build his American dream brick by unstable brick. But now, with everything we know, that storyline doesn't hold up. It wasn't naivety. It was control. The $100,000 question wasn't about impulsive spending. It was about what that money really built, and whether what was shown on TV was only part of the story. Because here's the thing. You don't ask your father-in-law for a six-figure loan if all you bring to the table is attitude. You don't walk into a family-owned operation and demand to lead unless you've already calculated how much they need you. Chuck kept opening the checkbook, way longer than logic would allow. Even when flips failed or deals stalled, Andre stayed in the picture. No serious consequences, no major fallout. The show played it like a man fumbling through entrepreneurship. But fans who tracked the timeline started noticing something strange. The numbers didn't add up. Several loans disappeared from discussion. The so-called failed flips weren't explained or followed up on. One property, in particular, appeared briefly, then never again. Paper trails from county records suggest it was sold fast, but the profits weren't disclosed. Meanwhile, just months later, reports out of Moldova began surfacing of a new residential building tied to Andre's hometown. Public records listed his father as the owner. The purchase price, suspiciously close to the total Andre had been fronted on camera. If that seems like a coincidence, it's not the only one. Rewatch the wedding arc. The second ceremony in Moldova wasn't a cultural necessity. They were already legally married. But the show framed it as a tribute to his heritage, a chance for his side of the family to feel included. What they didn't push was how much money Chuck handed Andre for that trip. We're talking tens of thousands, in cash for a wedding. During a time when international travel restrictions made full-scale events nearly impossible. So why the urgency? Why the cash? Fans brushed it off as giving in to Elizabeth's romantic dreams, or Andre's proud, old-school insistence on tradition. But anyone who's worked in international property knows this. Large wedding events are perfect for moving money cross-border. And if you use cash, especially in places where banking oversight is limited, it becomes nearly impossible to track. Now think about the timing: large checks from Chuck, suddenly followed by travel plans, then a wedding that felt rushed. Andre was sweating every dollar. He didn't want a princess dress, he wanted control of the budget. And Chuck, emotional and awkward as ever, paid up. This wasn't overspending, it was redirection. The entire season framed Andre as reckless with money. But what if that image was the cover? What if failing on screen was the best way to avoid scrutiny in real life? Because failed flips don't raise flags. Successful international investments do. And then there's the most overlooked part, the returns. For all the noise about how Andre wanted to earn his place, nothing he did in business gave back to Chuck. Every win for Andre was a loss Chuck absorbed. Profits went untraced. Roles shifted silently. And through it all, Elizabeth stood aside, thankful the family wasn't fighting, relieved Andre was trying. But trying what, exactly? And if money moved in silence, what else crossed during that ceremony? Because weddings don't usually build apartment complexes. Unless, of course, they're not really weddings. They're withdrawals, wrapped in lace and distraction. Elizabeth used to be sharp, funny, opinionated. She had her moments, snapping at her sisters, rolling her eyes at Chuck, calling Andre out in public when his confidence turned arrogant. But somewhere between the family fights and the last two seasons, her entire tone online changed. The captions got sweeter, the posts got softer. Suddenly, she was all about family time, quiet mornings, and calling Andre the best father in the world, even in weeks where he'd just screamed at her siblings on national TV. A couple filters, sure, normal, but this wasn't aesthetic, this was voice. Her digital presence slowly went from raw to robotic. Fans started noticing something weird. The syntax in her posts began to mirror Andre's. Words like baseless, toxic elements, our unit, started popping up. Not typical phrases Elizabeth ever used on camera. Then came the defensiveness. Anyone criticizing Andre in the comments got blocked or responded to, with captions dripping with cold logic and vague accusations. The vibe was off. People close to the family, including other cast members, hinted that Andre had full control of Elizabeth's social media starting around late 2021. Passwords, business inboxes, DM access, all allegedly filtered through him. On the surface, it looked like a partnership. Behind the screen, it felt more like erasure. Elizabeth went from being the central voice of the couple to a figure reposting perfectly lit family photos with no edge, no commentary, no personal pulse. Fans wondered, was she protecting him? Or was someone else posting entirely? And then came the move. Naples, Florida. On the show, we're told it was for a fresh start. Translation: get out of Tampa, where everyone knew their business, and set up shop 3 hours south where the drama couldn't follow. Chuck wasn't invited. The siblings weren't consulted. It wasn't a family decision. It was a clean break, which sounds like independence, until you realize who made the choice. Andre picked that house. Andre negotiated the loan. Andre told Elizabeth's family they weren't welcome, and she didn't push back. At all. Now think about that in context. You isolate someone geographically, you cut off frequent in-person contact with their family, you claim that phone drama isn't healthy, and only one voice is left echoing in their ears, yours. That's not privacy, that's control. Fans once thought Elizabeth stayed quiet to keep the peace, but the silence got louder over time. Her sisters hinted at breakdowns in communication. Becky once said in a live that she hadn't seen Ellie, Elizabeth's daughter, in months. Jen started posting cryptic quotes about boundaries and betrayal. No calls, no visits, no answers. Meanwhile, Andre's commentary online got sharper. Posts about fake loyalty, about cutting out weak energies, about real men protect their legacy. One-sided, aggressive, and always timed perfectly after a fallout with her family. And Elizabeth, nothing. No middle, no comments, just silence or curated captions that could have been written by anyone. Behind closed doors, people speculated their dynamic had shifted again, not toward love but ownership. Fans started noticing legal phrases popping up in confessionals. Andre bringing up immigration status. Andre talking about how everything is in his name. Andre, more than once, suggesting that the family couldn't take him down. But why say that unless you thought someone might try? There were rumors, online whispers that Andre had mentioned custody threats if Elizabeth ever tried to walk. These were never confirmed publicly, but the seed was there, the fear. And what better way to anchor someone emotionally than to make them believe that leaving means losing everything, not just the marriage, but their kid. He didn't have to be seen yelling to be controlling. He didn't have to grab the mic to own the narrative. He just had to intercept her voice. And over time, that's exactly what happened. What started as a love story slowly shrank into a single filtered frame, curated smiles, clean editing, and zero conflict outside of scenes created for TV. The truth wasn't erased, it was buried. Under baby photos, couple collabs, and image-perfect captions. Insiders pointed to a bigger issue. Andre allegedly acted as the point of contact for sponsorships. All emails to her brand went through him. He negotiated deals, controlled payouts, and filtered what made it to her inbox. She wasn't a partner, she was an asset, and that word matters. Because the same way someone flips a house, renovate, stage, sell, people can flip a person. Change their tone, edit their personality, cut out the parts that don't serve the plan. Her sisters may have complained about Andre's attitude, but they never questioned Elizabeth's love for her child. And that love may have been the very thing used against her. The fear of losing Ellie, or of failing as a mom, might have kept her quiet longer than we'll ever know. Because the scariest lies don't come from others, they come from someone you love. And when you don't know where the manipulation ends and your own thoughts begin, the silence isn't just painful, it protects the person pulling the strings. The final season didn't end. It hardened. Everything about that last stretch on camera felt strange: slow cuts, edited pauses, extended silences that lingered too long before the next sentence dropped. It was like watching a series hold its breath. The usual goofy side plots were gone. No lighthearted banter, no comic relief moments from the siblings, no comforting Chuck scenes trying to smooth things over with an awkward dad joke. Instead, we saw stiffness. The cast looked worn out. Andre stared through people rather than speaking to them. Elizabeth sat quieter than usual, her smiles feeling etched in, and the rest of the family. Eyes darting, posture shifted, mouths pressed tight. This wasn't drama anymore, it was damage. The tell-all that wrapped it all up was different too, not in content, in atmosphere. Tension spilled off the screen like someone broke the fourth wall and didn't mean to. Yara looked afraid. Jovi, usually the loudest guy in the room, backed off mid-sentence. Sean Robinson stopped pushing for answers halfway through a question. It felt choreographed until it didn't, like the script was ripped off the teleprompter in real time. And then, it just ended. Abrupt, fast, no climax. No classic TLC payoff. Social media lit up. Cast stopped posting. Rumors rushed in like a flood. Cease and desists, footage pulled at the last minute, unspoken threats thrown backstage, even a mention that security was called between filming blocks. Nothing confirmed, yet nothing denied. Then silence, from Andre, from Elizabeth, from the entire Pathas circle. Social accounts once filled with family brunches and blurry beach shots froze. Chuck stopped posting at all. And Elizabeth removed TV personality from her bio. A tiny change, but fans caught it. For a woman who made influencers her full-time gig, it sent a message louder than any caption. That's the public front. Behind the curtain, people started digging. And what they found changed everything. Property reports in Moldova show a new real estate development, officially registered, under a name never mentioned on TV, Andrei's father. The date of transfer. A few weeks after that final tell-all aired. The value, within striking range of what Andrei had received across multiple seasons, including the failed flip, the Moldova wedding costs, and supplemental loans from Chuck that were never reconciled. It wasn't instant profit. It was a shift from American visibility to Moldovan quiet. Assets moved. Legacies relocated. Paper trails became dust trails on different soil. Real estate watchers saw what American fans didn't. The empire didn't end. It resettled. Then came the ugliest speculation of all. Threaded through obscure Moldova forums, poorly translated Reddit posts, and cast-off mentions in fan groups was a new theory. Andrei may have left something behind when he fled Moldova, not just a job, not just debts but someone, a hidden child, a past relationship, something hushed that never crossed TLC's storyline. To be clear, there's no confirmation. No photos, no paternity tests, nothing that turns speculation into fact. But the timing of that theory surfacing, after the property transfer, after the social media blackout, stirred up old concerns. Why did he run? Why did he avoid contact with his past? Why so secretive about the family left behind, beyond vague mentions of a parent or a cousin with heart issues? Most of his conversations about Moldova on camera were clipped, guarded, and Elizabeth rarely brought it up, which now feels strange. For someone so obsessed with her family, she never pressed him on his. She flew there, married again, but asked no questions. Maybe she knew more than she let on. Maybe she didn't want to know. Either way, the silence around Andrei's past became a wall no one could climb, one that served him perfectly. Now, with the ban confirmed, the question isn't just why TLC cut ties. It's why they waited so long. Andrei wasn't unpredictable. He was consistent. He didn't break one rule, he lived in the gray zone for years. Aggressive on camera, dismissive to crew, emotionally coercive in confessionals, and erratic in ways that kept editors scrambling for a sympathetic frame. TLC has embraced villains before, but Andrei did more than stir conflict. He fractured trust. Stories leaked of staff meetings turning explosive, of on-set demands, of entire production days centered around managing him off-camera so others could perform on camera. By the end, it wasn't worth it. The final payoff came with too much risk. Lawsuits were allegedly outlined. NDAs circulated harder than promo clips. And still, no official PR statement from the network. Just a quiet removal from rosters, a delayed cast update, and a show moving forward without one of its loudest names. Because winning doesn't always look like triumph. Sometimes, it looks like vanishing. No parade, no post, no merch. Andrei left without a final word to the very audience that watched him climb. And by the time the truth started leaking, he was already gone, not humbled, but relocated. Not erased, just unreachable. And some fans still wonder, was that the plan from the start?